Great. Hi everyone, welcome to the Open Space and Recreation Plan Update Workshop. Thank you for joining us on this Thursday evening. We are meeting remotely per Governor Baker's emergency order, which allows public meetings to happen remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded. This meeting is a public engagement meeting, so there will be a lot of participation with everyone here. And so you may have noticed that you are allowed to unmute yourselves. And so we ask that you just respect that privilege, and in breakout rooms, we'll go over the format of the meeting, but that we just try to have orderly conversations during tonight's workshop. The chat for this meeting is disabled. We're hoping to have our conversations in real time, speaking to each other in the breakout rooms and not over chat. And I will hand it off to Anne, who will introduce herself and then talk about tonight's meeting. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Emily, and thank you everybody for joining us. I'm Anne LaRoyer. I'm the chair of the Open Space Committee, and I just wanted to mention joining us tonight, aside from Emily, of course, is Zach Vallette, the program supervisor in the Recreation Department, and Joe Connolly, and members of the Park and Rec Commission helping out with tonight, and other open space members, and Krista Moravik and Lena Porel from Horsley Witten Group, which is the consultant that we were able to hire to help with this plan update. And that funding for that was from a Community Preservation Act grant that was approved by town meeting. So we're very grateful for that, and we're looking forward to working with Horsley Witten on this. So after this short introductory presentation about the plan, participants will be joining facilitated small groups to talk for about an hour about how they currently experience the town's open spaces and recreational facilities, what they like and don't like, pet peeves, whatever. Then you can brainstorm about future ideas to improve resources, access, opportunities, and other ideas. Then we'll come back together at the end and hear from each group what ideas they come up with. And we'll be continuing to reach out to the community throughout the next 6 months. So just for a little background, the Open Space Committee is a volunteer town committee. It's responsible for preparing and monitoring the town's open space and recreation plan, which is usually now it's a 7-year plan. We have to follow state guidelines that explain all the materials that have to go into this comprehensive report, describing the current open space and recreation resources, and outlines an action plan to address documented needs for the next 7 years. So Arlington has had an open space and recreation plan in place since 1996. So this is our 5th round of planning. Keeping the plan current through regular updates like this one helps to maintain and enhance our environmental, social, and economic benefits for all of Arlington residents, and makes the town eligible for a variety of state grants for implementing new projects. For example, Arlington has been awarded more than $725,000 over the years from the Land and Water Conservation Fund that's administered by the state. Since the last update in 2015, Arlington has actually accomplished many of the goals and objectives that were set out in that plan. And so we want to give you a few highlights here. The Wellington Park on Grove Street received a major grant in the state's Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Program, which facilitated a plan to develop and implement ecologically sensitive flood management measures along Mill Brook, which runs right through the park. This project actually built upon an initiative by the Mystic River Watershed Association and the town that was funded by the CPA and with CDBG funds as well, to improve public access and recreational opportunities along the Millbrook corridor. This project also reinforces and complements recommendations in the town's 2019 Millbrook Corridor Report, and the 2015 master plan, all of which wanting to draw attention to the historical ecological resources of the brook. It's hoped that this flood management project can serve as a model for other mitigation opportunities along Millbrook in the future. The final phase of the park amenities and some additional ecological landscaping at the park are going to be completed this summer. Another project was initiated actually by the Open Space Committee ourselves, called Take a Walk. And this is posted on our town website. And there's a town-wide map and plus 7 neighborhood maps like this one that show safe walking routes linking open spaces, conservation lands, playing fields, playgrounds, other points of interest. So this project actually began several years ago within the Open Space Committee, long before COVID came along. But these maps were really accessed a lot during the last year and a half or so. And so many people were walking around town and discovering little hidden corners of town. And it was become a great resource, I think, for a lot of people. Some other things that have happened around town, kudos to many of the different town departments and other commissions and organizations that have taken the lead. The townwide tree inventory, many of you I'm sure know about. EcoFest and EcoWeek events have engaged and educated residents about our local environment in different ways. Lots of stormwater projects are undertaken by the DPW and the Conservation Commission. Green infrastructure projects include rain gardens, pervious paved parking areas and trails, and plantings of many native trees and pollinator gardens are very popular. And bikeway, of course, is a major thoroughfare that we all know about. So thank you for that. And now Zach is going to talk about some of the recreation projects that have happened recently.
Thank you, Ann. Good evening, everybody. My name is Zach Byatt, and I am the program supervisor for the Arlington Rec Department. I've had the pleasure of sitting in on the open space and recreation plan update for the Rec Department and on behalf of the Parks and Rec Commission. So since 2015, a variety of recreation-based projects have been completed in the town of Arlington to help expand upon recreational opportunities and existing facilities. The first project that our recreation would like to highlight is the Reservoir Master Plan, phases 1 and 2. In 2018, a master plan for the Arlington Reservoir was completed. As a result of this master plan, began phase 1 work in 2019. The highlight of phase 1 was a new filtration and UV water system for the Reservoir Beach swimming area. Phase 2 work began last year in 2020 with building improvements to both the bathhouse and concession stand, as well as the pump house. Work has continued through 2021 with bank stabilization and invasive species removal occurring currently. By the end of next year, 2022, the phase 2 work at the Arlington Reservoir will be complete, bringing beach improvements, an ADA accessible walking path around the entirety of the res, a new playground, a new parking lot, and a new boat. When these renovations are finished, the total project cost between the phases will be close to $5 million. Second projects that we would like to highlight is the ADA improvements across a variety of recreation facilities in town. As a result of the 2014 Town of Arlington ADA audit and implementation plan, numerous ADA improvements have occurred at recreation locations in town. This includes locations such as the Ed Burns Arena and the Summer Street Complex. With each project that's occurring with recreation, ADA improvements are being made. An example of this would be the res walking path. So a variety of different ADA improvements across recreational facilities in the town of Arlington. And the third major project that we would like to highlight since 2015 is the Thompson Louisiana Playground renovation. This playground opened up in the fall of 2020. It was a $500,000 playground renovation for the Louisiana Playground as a result of the Community Preservation Act, state grants secured by state representatives and a community development block grant program. And there are several other things that we would like to highlight as accomplishments since the last master plan update. And those include a variety of projects including Magnolia Playground and Community Garden renovations, the Robin Farms Field and Historical Marking upgrades, the 2021 Field and Playground feasibility study that we just did with Stantec, which will provide us with ideas for future renovations at a variety of different properties in town, Buckfield outfield protective netting, Crosby tennis courts resurfacing, and the removal of Poets Corner tennis courts. The last thing I just want to highlight upon on behalf of the Park and Rec Commission and Recreation is that we're excited to announce that we have received full funding for 3 projects in the fiscal year 22. This includes funding for the renovation of Herd Field and for new playgrounds at both Spy Pond and Parmenter Park. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Zach. Now, Krista from Horsley Witten is going to give us a little more background on the open space planning process.
Thank you, Anne and Zach. So I just wanted to touch on some of the basics of the open space and recreation plan. So when we talk about open space, we're talking about public and private land that is undeveloped for a variety of reasons. It might be public access to nature, protecting water quality and habitat, protecting scenic views. I think when we talk about recreation, that's a little more understandable. So any indoor and outdoor facilities like parks, playgrounds, basketball courts, tennis courts, those types of things. So Anne touched on a couple of these. So why does Arlington need an open space and recreation plan? So it maintains the benefits of these resources. So environmental benefits, it gives us clean air and clean water, social benefits, healthy residents, places for us to be active, but also places where we can gather as a community. And economic benefits too. So living near protected open space can increase property values, but also these resources bring people into town and they visit local businesses as well. The plan is important because it helps guide decisions around open space, natural resources, and recreational issues. It's used with other town plans and policies to promote policies and move them forward. And finally, supporting efforts to acquire funding. So Anne talked and both Zach talked about the funding that they've received to do all these great projects. So having a plan allows you to assess where you are, where you want to go, and how you're going to get there. And it shows funding organizations and agencies who are offering funding opportunities that you've looked into these issues, you reached out to the community, and you have support for them. So the plan itself, Anne had talked about the requirements. So there are 11 sections, which I will not go through, but some of the highlights are a community snapshot. So it talks about demographics, who lives in town. There are resource inventory, so environmental resources, open space and recreation inventories. It talks about needs, so needs for natural resource protection, community needs, why we're here tonight. And then also from the town's perspective, management needs and how they can maintain these resources and operate them. There are goals and objectives, and then in the 7-year action plan, which highlights, who is responsible for moving these items forward, when they're anticipated to be done, and some potential funding sources for them. So just a quick overview of our process. So we review since 2015, any new data, reports, plans, studies, inventories, those types of things. We interview town staff. We hold our first public event, to understand community needs, why we're here tonight. We'll take that information, draft a plan, and then come back out to you all and talk, did we get this right? What have we missed? We also need to distribute the plan for support and comments. So we need to have the select board review it, the redevelopment board, and also Arlington's regional planning agency, which is the Metropolitan Area Council, so MAPC, which some of you might be familiar with. And then we submit it to DCS for review and approval. But I would like to highlight that we are going to do continuous public outreach throughout this process. So not just these 2 events. We'll be out throughout the summer and early fall, meeting people and talking to people about needs. Both Anne and Zach mentioned some reports and studies that have happened. There's a lot of information that is informing this update. So we're reviewing all of those. We incorporate them into the update process. So I also wanted to highlight, so this is a map of all the town's open space and recreational resources. So you can see some privately owned properties, town-owned properties, some state owned properties, and then the bikeways in there. You'll be using this map when we do our small groups as well. And what I'm going to pass it over to my colleague Lena, and she's going to go over logistics for tonight.
Thanks, Krista. So I'll be brief, but just some logistics about our breakout rooms. So in the next few minutes, you'll be put into these small groups to have small group discussions about our open space and recreation areas. And your group will either focus on recreation or open space, depending on what you chose when you registered for tonight's meeting. If you have changed your mind since you've registered, that's also okay. Just once you're in your group, you can leave to come back into the main room, and Emily can help place you in a room that fits the needs of what you want to talk about. So each group will have a facilitator and some note takers just to keep the conversation moving and make sure that we're capturing all of your ideas. Again, just to reiterate, the chat is disabled. So in order to participate, you will have to unmute yourself. And we'll be in those groups for about an hour before we come back together and report out on what we've talked about. If you have any questions, feel free to talk to your facilitator in your group, or you can also wait to the end and we can take questions at the end of the workshop tonight. And then to talk about what our discussion questions. So we have 3 broad questions we'll be focusing on both in the recreation and open space groups. First, we will be talking about what is the town doing well to meet community needs for recreation and for open space. Second, what could the town do better and how in terms of recreation and open space? And 3, what more can the town do? What opportunities are currently being missed that you can think of? And then lastly, we just have some ground rules to keep this a fun night. So first, be kind and respectful to those in your group. Be concise. We have a large group today and we want to make sure that everyone gets a chance to speak and share their ideas. 3, be open to new ideas that might come up in your discussions. Be patient with technology. There's always some sort of brief tech issues, so be patient if that happens. We'll get it fixed. And most importantly, have fun. Have fun talking with different residents in your town, talking about open space and parks and what you love about it. And I think with that, if there are no questions about breakout rooms, I will hand it to Emily, who I think will be sending us into those breakout rooms shortly.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lena. So everyone, I am going to place you into breakout rooms. I'm basing this off a report I ran at 6:40, and I think some folks have registered since then. So I'm going to release everyone into the breakout rooms that I have which breakout room they wanted, open space or recreation, and then we will have a group of folks still left in the main room. In which case I will just ask you your preference and then designate you to go into a breakout room. So I appreciate your patience as this happens, but I'm going to open the breakout rooms now. So if you have received an invitation to go into a breakout room, hi everyone,
No, I'm a
welcome
passenger.
back. Oh, you are? Okay, good. Great. Welcome back to the main room, everybody. We have about 15 seconds and then everyone will be joining us. So we'll just wait a few moments before we start the report out. So thank you so much. Welcome back, everybody. Okay, so Lena, do you want to
Yes.
lead us through the next portion? Thank you.
Yes, of course. So welcome back, everyone. So we're going to do a short report out. So each group will have about 2 minutes to go over kind of the big ideas and big themes that were discussed in their groups. I guess I can start with my group to start with, and we'll go down the list. So my group was talking about recreation, about the things that we love about Arlington. We love the reservoir. We love that there's this new project happening and all the new amenities that are going to be added there. We love the Parks and Rec Department and the Parks Commission and all the work that they do. We like the bike trails, Sky Pond for kayaking in that area. In terms of what could be better, there was a lot of discussion about maintenance, and that Arlington does these great big projects that are wonderful for the community, but there doesn't seem to be a plan for maintenance and funding going forward after these projects are finished. There was some discussion about not having spaces available for indoor recreation in town, that they're all kind of owned by the school department. So trying to find spaces in Arlington that are specifically for indoor recreation activities. And there was also discussion about just the overall definition of what recreation is, and kind of making that, really thinking about what recreation can be and how it can be mixed with art and theater, how it can be used for artists in the community to sell their crafts and things like that. So rethinking what recreation is from what maybe we think of it going forward, and seeing where it goes from there. And I think that's what covered most of the things from my group, but we will go down the list. So I think, let's see, Gemma, do you want to go next?
Sure. I'm going to actually turn it over to Christina Murphy, who's going to represent us and talk about a couple key points. But we also were a recreation group. We talked about recreation. We covered a lot of the same ground, Lena, that you and your group did. And I'll hand it over to Christina.
Hey there. A lot of our group echoed what you just said, but the two broad themes that came kind of across were the maintenance plan to keep up, the very expensive playgrounds that have been put into place and other recreational sites. And then an idea that emerged from one of our members of our group about how Arlington sort of like lacks a center space dedicated to performances and cultural gatherings. So like a cultural space center where there could be art performances, but any sort of cultural performance, not a sports related gathering, but to just showcase our wonderfully diverse community and available for all ages. So a space dedicated for that, where you could walk by and just join in whoever's performing. So that was kind of like the biggest idea that came out of our group.
Great, thank you, Christina.
Sure.
Okay, Jeff.
All right. Well, we obviously covered a lot of that same ground as well. I'd say there are two sort of big ideas and two very specific ideas that were most popular in our group. Again, we are recreation as well. One is a need for more activities and equipment for older kids and teens. That a lot of the park spaces are geared towards younger kids. A lot of the play equipment is geared towards younger kids. And beyond sports fields or organized sports, there should be rope climbing or adventure courses or dirt biking, anything that would be more active, productive activities for teens and older kids. And the other, very similar to group two, would be just more programming throughout all of the park spaces, more community events, communal opportunities for people in Arlington to get together, music, movies, and so forth, and just keeping spaces programmed and open longer and more days of the week so that people have more opportunities for interaction. And then the two specific ideas that were most appreciated was a need for a pavilion, something that's covered and provides shade for events, for picnics, or even for someone who wants to work outside and get out of the house for a while. And then finally, that at least some of the playgrounds should be lighted at night, particularly in the fall and winter when it gets dark early. Would love to see lights make it possible for kids to keep playing until early evening.
Great. Thanks, Jeff. Okay, I think for the last recreation, Sarah.
Hello. So we also talked about recreation, and we had a lot of the same ideas as the first three groups. We talked about how we love the playgrounds and the parks in Arlington, the beaches, the bike path. And we talked about what more we could do in Arlington. And the biggest theme that came up, like some of the other groups has said, was maintenance. Focus on picking up some of the trash. Someone had the idea to maybe even have like some sports teams maybe go out and do some volunteer hours. A lot of the high schools need volunteer hours before graduating. That may be a good opportunity to do some collaboration there, especially since it seems like there aren't too many maintenance people to be keeping up with all of the parks that are in Arlington. And this may kind of overlap into the open space, but having some more signage and maybe signs that have like a theme. So Zach in the group brought up, he used to live in Burlington, and all the Burlington signs had like a kind of identity, some kind of theme. It would be nice for all the signs to kind of line up in Arlington, especially since some of them have double names. It would just be kind of cool to do that, and maybe even include like a QR code on some of them that give a little bit of background on the area. Another idea was having more kind of like music festivals and art events, especially post-pandemic. People are ready to get out of their houses and start doing things together again. So those, and we had an outdoor swimming pool was kind of a biggie that we ended on. But those were the big ideas that came from my group.
Great, thanks, Sarah. So I think we'll move to the open space group. So Emily.
Sure. We talked about signage on the bike path that might be able to better link users with both local businesses and open spaces, since a lot of the open spaces are adjacent to the bike path, and people might not know about them, but maybe we could get some more traffic from the bike path to some of the open spaces. We also talked about ideas for environmental stewardship on privately owned land, or even homeowners' private property. What could the open space and recreation plan do to address issues like paving over driveways, and ideas on privately owned areas or areas that might be at risk. We talked about some specific areas that people really enjoyed. So, the reservoir, Mount Gilboa, what the town is doing really well in certain areas to, clear downfall and keep the open areas and conservation areas well maintained. So that was kind of a highlight as well. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Emily. Will.
Sure, thank you. Our group talked a lot about the great volunteer initiatives that are happening throughout the town, from volunteer groups for the different open spaces, the active involvement of students and teachers when it comes to volunteer work within the community related to open space. We talked about some good initiatives, such as renovation of benches and tables at Cooks Hollow, and the potential of returning things like that to Buzzell Fields. We had a really good conversation about invasive plant issues and the likely need of kind of like a town-wide manager or management of invasive plants such as Japanese knotweed and others, with those issues cropping up, no pun intended, at many different open space locations. We did talk about maintenance and the challenges of maintenance and the funding of maintenance. We talked a little bit about traffic islands and beautification of those, not necessarily just mulching, addressing any Japanese knotweed or other issues with those. And we kind of closed out our discussion talking a little bit more about public education and awareness in the open spaces, as well as closing our conversation talking a little bit about connection and access issues with paths around Spy Pond. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Will. Okay, Nate.
Sure, thanks, Lena. A lot of repeats here, great repeats. Invasive species is a biggie in our group, and making sure that gets managed and then replaced with natives and other plants that are just really going to thrive and create, biodiversity that is, meant to be here, meant to be in this area. And with that, that kind of bleeds into the issue of signage, because our group talked about, let's not only have signage to tell people where things are, but let's have signage about these native plants, and that engages people in the landscape and sort of creates sort of this culture of appreciation and stewardship, which then bleeds into this idea of the maintenance. So our group was really, into the idea of the community getting involved in maintenance. Others talked about volunteers, but one of our members, sort of had this vision of, this is how we can bring people together. We all need this. We're coming out of COVID, and what if we had sort of loosely organized weekly, bi-weekly cleanup activities where people could just show up and hang out together and clean up a space a little bit and enjoy each other's company and meet meet people, and sort of blending stewardship and community building together. So it was really sort of great discussion. And then finally, just on a very simple level, the folks in our group they're just worried about open space. They're worried about losing it, and that, see it as a finite resource, and just, have hopes that this effort and this plan is going to make a clear statement about, the open spaces that we have, the open spaces that we don't have, what we want, and what's going to be protected going forward.
Great. Thank you, Nate. And I think Krista, last but not least.
Thanks, Lena. Our group did touch on a lot of things, both recreation and open space. They kind of came together, but I will touch on a couple of things sort of related. So talking about native plants and using that as a sort of a policy on town-wide, but also the maintenance of those areas and making sure that they're maintained. It's not that there's care given to the type of landscape that's there and how they're maintained. There was a great appreciation for the variety of places and spaces and open spaces in Arlington and the accessibility of them. But some new ideas that we talked about, or what could be better, sort of blended into two, was using streets and pathways to build green corridors. So shady corridors was the term that was used, and using those to connect these open spaces as an extension of them. So using them as part of the network. And we also talked a lot about art. I know that was mentioned quite a bit, but having it integrated into the design and the culture of designing spaces and thinking about how they're used, but bringing art in the beginning of the process, and not just something that comes in just one piece of a design, but having it part of and integrated into the process, and having some dedication of funding or resources for that. We talked about signage as well. And then recognizing the multi-purposeness of spaces, how they can be used in different ways, and sort of incorporating that into the design and having that flexibility. So similar themes that everyone had, but some different and unique things. Again, not enough time, but that's okay. So I think I'll end there, and we'll talk about, next steps. And I'm just gonna share my screen because we still want to collect your ideas, and of course, patience with technology, right?
Well, let me just
Yes, I'll
step in then while you're getting
Yes,
the
thank you.
screen up. Thanks. Thanks to everybody for being here. And this has been a really valuable opportunity to get lots of good ideas on the table. And in addition to the recorded reports that we just recorded this part, as you know, all of the groups had note takers. So there's lots of ideas that came up that will be incorporated and compiled into the full set of ideas that we'll be looking at. And we're also going to be being sure we reach out to other residents who couldn't be here tonight. And we're going to be continuing to reach out and get feedback over the next at least 4, 5, 6 months. We'll be putting together a short survey that'll be on the website in a few weeks, and so that people will be advertising that a lot, and we'll be sending volunteers and open space committee members and others out to visit the parks and playgrounds and conservation areas and other streetscapes, to talk to people on the street, so to speak, to get ideas, just to find people and talk to them where they are using open space and what they think about it, and also, of course, the recreational properties as well. So we'll have another public meeting in October after we start to put together some recommendations and ideas and goals. And so we want to be keeping in touch with all of you, and as well as, all residents in town throughout the next few months as we, continue to bring things together. And thank you again for your participation. You can see here the email address, osrpupdate@town.arlington.mass.us. Please continue to send in your comments to that email, and contact any of us that you may know on the side if you want to. So thank you again, and we'll hope to see you at another event around town.
Thank you. This is wonderful.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Really appreciate everybody's
Thank you,
being
everyone.
out here tonight.
Thank you.
And do you want me just to end the meeting, or do you want
Do we,
some-
well, it's about 8:30, but if anybody has some pressing urgent thing they want to say, that's, I guess, if we have a little bit of time and people want to stay on, that's fine.
but feel free to jump off if
And I just say that it came up at the very end of our talk. What about acquiring new undeveloped land to put into so I think that should just get mentioned, because I think we often feel like, well, that's not even possible. So
Well,
why even talk about that? But
As a matter of fact, at this very moment, there's a ZBA meeting happening about the Mugar property, and that is the last major open space that's left in town that's identifiable as, so anybody that wants to leave this meeting and go listen to another meeting at the ZBA, you may hear something about that. That's definitely been on the agenda of the open space plan as far as recreations, as far as acquisitions, since the very beginning for 30 years.
Yes.
So it's always been out there. It's been a very complex and difficult situation, as you know. But anyway, it's still not settled. There's there's still conversations and a lot of work going on.
I see a raised hand.
Yep. So Karen will take your question.
So what occurred to me after we were in our small groups
I don't know whether this applies to open space, but it's a townwide action that could be taken by the Spy Pond Committee that I have been hoping for, is labeling storm drains throughout the town as they were once done by the Boy Scouts who volunteered to help with this effort, and just indicating to do not pour, whatever it said, don't pour anything down this storm drain. It goes into nearby water bodies, no pollutants or whatever. Because I think that's important for the water bodies that surround the area, and
Thank you, Karen.
so even in the streets of Arlington, that groundwater, the stormwater runoff.
Okay, that's a new idea. Good one.
There's the list.
Okay, well, thank you again, everyone, for joining. We'll look forward to future conversations about this topic as the plan update process continues. So have a great night.
Thanks, everybody.